everybody, what's going on? Sean Daniel here with Guitar Control. Today we're talking about synchronization, specifically the synchronization between your hands and not just each other. A lot of people are like, okay, let's sync our hands. What does that mean? Syncing maybe like your left hand or your fretting hand to your picking hand to try to like build up speed. But it's more than that. We're syncing our hands to our minds, to our mouths, to our hearts, and to our souls. So today we're going to talk about how to maybe do some things that can kind of sync your hands up so it really improves your timing. We're going to talk about how you can use scales, arpeggios, and maybe like little like motif exercises to kind of get better at that kind of thing. And also we are going to be doing this without the aid of a metronome, but when you practice it, you definitely want to use a metronome. And why am I not using a metronome for the live video is because I've tried to kind of use a metronome going live before, and it's just kind of like disconjointed because I'm trying to talk and I'm like turning the metronome on and off. But definitely these are meant to be used with a metronome. So let's get right to it. Why is synchronizing your hands important? Well, if your right hand is kind of doing one thing, and then your fret or your picking hand and your fretting hand is doing like another thing, it's just like a mess. Nobody wins. You just kind of look foolish, whatever. It might seem like you're doing something really fast, but you know, it just doesn't sound good. Hello, what's going on, Adam? Good to see you, man. We're just welcome to the party, man. We're talking about syncing our hands up. So really, let's just kind of start with something kind of simple. I'm just going to be alternating picking most of the time here, which all that means is I'm not going down, down twice in a row. I'm always going down and up every time. Even if I'm skipping strings, I'm going down and up. So if I'm playing a note, like I'm playing the 5th fret on the low E string, I'm just going down and up, alternating every single time. So one of the best ways you can kind of sync your picking hand and your fretting hand is by getting all your fingers involved and just doing kind of a chromatic run through the fretboard. So one way that I like to warm up would just be to go 5, 6, 7, 8. And I kind of like the 5th fret because the spacing of this is actually kind of, you know, probably the most comfortable. If you do it on the 1st fret, you might be stretching a little bit more, which is cool. If you do it down here, it might be a little cramped. Eventually, you're gonna get to all these spots, but I like starting at the 5th fret. It's kind of like, you know, it's the center of the guitar, looks good visually. It's kind of a good look for guitarists, whatever. By the way, if any of you have any questions during this entire thing, please hit me up. I have no problem going off script. Not that there is a script, because there's really never a script, because I can't really trust myself to stick to anything. But chromatic runs throughout all 6 strings. So we start on the E string, down, up, A string, D string, G, B, E. And now, if you were really trying to bore yourself to death, you would just go backwards through those, which is, you know, a very valid exercise for sure. But you might as well try to do something a little bit different. So if you just kind of want to get warmed up, you want to practice syncing your picking hand to your fretting hand, maybe go up through this with the help of a metronome or a drum track or something. Then when you get to the end, curveball, what do? You go a fret higher. And then go backwards, alternate picking the whole time, and really you're kind of cementing the relationship between your left and right hand. And not just your hands, but every single digit that you have through the entire thing, right? And try to get every single note clean. And notice I'm not really pulling off like that. Every kind of finger gets its own thing going. So it's really cementing the relationship between your left and your right hand. That's what we're talking about, the cementing of it. So that is just one chromatic exercise you can do. Chromatic just means every single note. Now if you want to kind of work on going through every single like position, you can do that too. A lot of people like that. Whatever, as long as you're picking up the guitar and you're kind of practicing this stuff, it's gonna get easier over time. Now the main thing that I think will help kind of dictate who's in charge here. And when I say in charge, like, is your picking hand in charge? Is your fretting hand in charge? How do you get these to mix? Is we're talking about your actual brain. Most guitar players do have brains, which is what separates guitar players from bass players and drummers. but we want to kind of get our brain on the same track as our hands. So I think the best way to do that is if you can say it, then you can play it. And that's what I stress a lot to all my students. So the hesitation is to like learn something and then try to play it as fast as you can. But really you want to slow it down to the point that you can say the actual words of what you're doing. And I think this comes in really handy, mostly with triplets. All right. So a triplet is everybody's favorite subdivision. All it is you take one beat and you break it into symmetrical thirds, right? So if our metronome is going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'd be triplet, 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 triplet. Not like if you were to play that, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Triplet, 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 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Now, one of the things I see a lot of players get caught up on when they're starting to first incorporate triplets is they'll play 3 notes and pause. And those aren't actually triplets like. They're actually kind of playing quarter notes, but just like leaving the last one out, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Whereas those aren't triplets. You want to kind of get the sound of a triplet down because the sound of triplets is something that I think really kind of lends itself to cool guitar playing very well, no matter what kind of style of music you're interested in. So being able to speak the triplets at the speed that you want to eventually play them is very key. And I think once you kind of get that down, being able to say what you want to play, then your brain is making the connection between your hands to everybody get on the same page. It's so much easier when you actually can kind of like say what you're doing. So if we're gonna go through, let's go through like the A minor scale, okay? So we'll just do the first octave, which is 5E, 7E, 8E, 5A, 7A, 8A, 5D, 7D, right? So what is going on from West Virginia? Larry, how you doing, my man? Good to see ya. We're just talking about triplets through the minor scale. I mean, what better Wednesday night application could you guys be up to right now? Everybody's favorite minor scale position, A minor, right? So again, triplets through this scale, if we wanted to say it. And honestly, another good thing to do is instead of just counting 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Yeah, I heard that I caught the last few words. Okay, cool, yeah. So we're just going through the A minor scale with triplets, speaking them out loud as a way to kind of help synchronize our hands by using our brains to force our hands into a position. It's so much easier to have your hand take an action when you have like a word to kind of anchor it. If you only had 10 minutes to pick up the guitar, what would you do for a newish player to get better sync? I think this is the one. Take just 10 minutes of time through a scale and then play them in triplets while you're speaking them, all right? So like we were just saying, if you can say it while you're playing it, that's the best way to get your left hand and your right hand to kind of like follow the leader, which is your actual words. Kind of like when you first learn to start maybe like playing a song and singing at the same time, it's easier to attach a chord to an actual word because then you're kind of anchoring your brain to something that your hands are doing. This is the best way to do it. Kind of like an odd subdivision triplets through a scale instead of just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. We're gonna do that same thing. Everything gets a beat, but every beat is gonna be a triplet. So A triplet, B triplet, C triplet, D triplet, E triplet, F triplet, G triplet, A triplet. And again, notice the picking. It's not down, 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 down. You can maybe do it and you will be actually building speed, but that alternate picking is a great way to kind of start the synchronization between those hands. So again, you can count them however you want. Some people like saying triplets as one word, like 3 syllables being triplet, 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 triplet. Other people like saying the number of the beat first and then triplet as a 2-syllable word. And again, if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes, it would be 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 5 triplet, 6 triplet, 7 triplet, 8 triplet. I don't necessarily like that because eventually numbers like 7 have 2 syllables and then you're like 7 triplet. You know, it's kind of like you're really rushing it, and I think that's a great way to get off time. Some people do it, whatever. I'm not here to judge. I'm just hanging out. We're just partying. Again, I think a great way to do this, and again, kind of like what you just asked, like what do you do if you only have 10 minutes to exercise, to do like a practice or an exercise or something like that? You want to make those 10 minutes count as much as you can. So why not practice something that your left hand is doing, something your right hand is doing, and something that your mind is doing? So when you actually speak aloud the notes, you're not only practicing good alternate picking technique, you're not only synchronizing your hands, you're not only learning a new subdivision really well if you're just kind of getting into triplets, but you're also actually kind of subconsciously drilling where the notes are on a guitar in this position. That's why I like saying the name of the note and then the subdivision through the synchronization of your hands. A triplet, B triplet, C triplet, D triplet, E triplet, F triplet, G triplet, A triplet. Okay? Do it super slow. And again, if you want to do, I think the challenge of the alternate picking is especially when you're switching strings. Because like if you down, up, 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 down, up. It can be kind of difficult to kind of switch strings if you get caught like in between. But it's what you gotta do, because the synchronization of your hands is super important, and it's not just for playing lead and playing like scales and stuff like that. It's also for chords. Like if you notice good like acoustic rhythm players, they're so solid on the downbeat of different passages, and you know, not just the downbeat like everywhere, but really like if you think of maybe like a really simple progression, like we're gonna go A minor to C to F, right? The synchronization between my hands is allowing me to play way more percussively than just A, C, F. And I mean, this might be good timing. But once I really get the synchronization between these hands, you can really kind of like add a ton of flavor to your strumming. So a lot of people think of the synchronization between your hands and they just think of lead playing, they just think of scales, but it has a lot to do with all aspects of music and across different instruments, across different genres, however you want to look at it, because it's ultimately a rhythmic thing, right? I'm pretty good at acoustic rhythm, and I've played mostly for 20 years, very cool area. Now you want to learn lead? Well man, this is the best place. So, in fact, before we talk about rhythm then, just for you, Larry, we're going to go sidetrack. We're going to talk more about arpeggios first, because I still have a little issue with that lifting of the fingers. Yeah, you'll get there, Adam. You just got to practice, man. You'll get there. So, like, maybe that's another common thing, too. Like, aside from just synchronizing things, how do you start playing lead? Because maybe, like, you've got rhythm down, you think you're doing really well. All this stuff kind of goes together. It's all the same thing. I wanted to talk about arpeggios, and I think arpeggios is, like, one of the best ways into lead playing, because it's a little bit more focused than just drilling scales. Kind of like we talked about before, you know? This is a great way to kind of like learn the minor scale and kind of like figure out where you are all over the neck. Maybe you can play the minor scale here, play the major scale here, play the Dorian mode here, but it's like, what does all that really mean in the grand scheme of things? Because eventually you're gonna be playing over chord progression, and then you wanna be able to kind of play along with that chord progression, right? That's where arpeggios come in super handy. So we're just gonna do a G major arpeggio, and we're gonna do the same thing, alternate pick style, to sync our hands with it. All right? Yeah, so with lead, yeah, a lot of people get lost just like playing lead, and I think that's why arpeggios are the best way to kind of really see through the fretboard instead of seeing a position. So, all right, what does all this mean? We're gonna do a major arpeggio. Arpeggio is just you play a chord one note at a time. There's a G major chord, right? So all this is a G, a B, a D note, another G note, another B note, and another G note. Any combination of G, B, and D will give you a G major chord. Now, let's say you can't play multiple notes at the same time, right? A lot of different instruments have this. Some instruments you only play like one note at a time. Like a lot of string instruments, even though you can play multiple notes, usually they're played like a violin, generally plays a lot of like single note things. They'll play a G major chord one note at a time. They'll play a G, a B, and a D. So they'll play like a G, a B, and a D. Okay, so now that doesn't really sound like lead playing, but that is like the introduction to the roadmap of a G major arpeggio that will lead us through the neck that you'll eventually be able to incorporate into lead playing. So what I mean by that is, let's start on that G, 3rd fret on the low E string with your pointer finger. We're gonna take it from here. We're gonna take your ring finger to the 7th fret of the E string. This is a G, G sharp, A sharp, B. So this is our first one. There's our major 3rd. Going down to the A string, the 5th fret, that's our D note. G, B, D. Now if you want to reach G, B, D, that's fine. You know, it's kind of that's a big reach for right there, but you can do it. It's not essential. I like the sound of going from a G, sliding from the 5th fret to the 7th fret, G, B, D, okay? So this shape, I have a 4 fret interval, a 4 fret space, and then I go down a string back 2 frets to get to a minor 3rd, or the 5th of G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A 1, a 3, and a 5. G, B, D. Now I can do this exact same shape on the next G, which is just the 5th fret on the D string. Okay? This is the octave G. You can find that from the major scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, G, G. We can do the exact same thing we just did here. Here. Okay? So G, B, D, G, B, D. Alright? Now notice I'm still syncing with my picking hand, alternate picking style. Down, up, down, up, down, up. Now you can do this with the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like however, you know, you kind of like choose to count it. Eventually we do that in triplets too. But yeah, let's start with just 2 octaves of this. The first shape, 1, 3, 5. Repeat the same thing. Okay, now you can actually choose to play that 2nd note. I'm kind of sliding into it. Sometimes you can kind of play it as its own beat, like 1, like that, right? Sometimes it's a lot easier to count to 4 than it is to 3 sometimes. So this would be kind of like hitting the A into the 3. G, A, B, D. 1, 2, 3, 4. That might be easier to kind of start instead of doing everything in 3 like we've been doing with the triplets. Then the same thing, G, A, B, D. G, A, B, D, G, A, B, D. Alright? So, this is starting to synchronize your hands with each other. Now you can do this with the metronome. Then you can go backwards. Everything is always harder backwards, right? You just go back to just it's kind of like that roadmap. We're just going forward. A great intro to lead playing. And then anytime you see a G major chord, you know it's always fun backwards, right? Anytime you see a G major chord, any of these notes are fair game. Just like they are with like a G major scale and your scale positions all over the place. But with a G major arpeggio over a G major chord, you're getting the chord tones and the chord tones only. I mean, again, we're kind of adding an A. So I guess some people would say that's like a flavor that we're adding. You could say that's like an add 9 or something like that. Because that would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 5, 1. You could look at that as a 9, like a 1, 3, 5, 9. Again, the numbers and like the chord names aren't super important right now. It's just kind of getting a few spots that you can kind of see through, right? So anytime you see a G major chord, you can kind of get to this. Now we can go 1 octave further to find the next G, which would actually, we have to compensate for the B string being tuned differently. So we just go to this one right here, which is the 8th fret on the B string, which is a G. And then from here, we can do the same shape again. Right? 1, 2, major 3rd, 5. So the whole 3 octave arpeggio would be G, A, B, D, G, A, B, D, G, A, B, D, and then end it on a G, which is mirrored over the 12th fret, the 15th fret on the high E string, okay? So again, that's gonna be something that if you practice a lot, you can really kind of just shred through. And I think it's good to kind of just really nail a few arpeggios that you can have just solid, because it's a great way to start opening up the fretboard, syncing your hands by alternate picking, just like that, right? And then since it's just a major arpeggio, you can use that for any major chord you ever encounter, right? It doesn't even have to be in the same key. It could be like a totally weird chord progression that goes out of key. It could start with like a G major, and then maybe it goes to like a B flat major. And then any time you see a chord and you want to kind of solo over it, what is the technical definition of arpeggio? All that is, the technical definition of arpeggio is a chord being played one note at a time. So again, a triad is a 3-note chord. Any major or minor chord is a triad. It's just 3 notes. So here's a G, B, and a D. There's a couple different ones. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, don't worry about it. That's the thing about, like, you know, when I teach lessons, some people are like, oh, I hate making you repeat stuff. No, like, repetition is like the way you like drill and like you learn things. Like, as a teacher, I need to repeat stuff, you know, because a lot of times when you're kind of like going over new concepts, not everything is going to sink in the first time, especially like, you know, there's something about music theory where it's almost like you're pulling from all over the place and eventually you put the whole puzzle together. It's, for a lot of people, I wouldn't say it's like a linear thing to learn. Like, okay, you learn this, it's on to the next thing. I know that's not how it was for me. For me, it was, okay, I just learned how to play some songs, don't know what I'm doing. Then, okay, chords, like what, like how come a C and a G chord always seem to be in the same place? Oh, because, you know, in the key is C, C is 1, and G is a 5. Well, what does that mean? It's like, okay, oh, there's 7 notes in the major scale, and G is 5. Like, so all that stuff just kind of like comes together. So really, don't ever be afraid to ask questions, whether it's in the comment section of this channel or any other channel that you might frequent, even if it's just people you're talking to, because I think you gotta be a real douche to be like, I already said that, I'm not gonna repeat myself, you know? So totally into punk rock power chords for the last few weeks. Any good lessons to learn from bashing power chords for a while? Of course. So I think the main thing to take from power chords is to be like, okay, let's just start with the basic definition of a power chord. What most people see as a power chord. If you take a power chord, the 5th fret on the E string, and it's 5th, you always go down a string 2 frets higher. That's a power chord, right? So again, we can tie this into like syncing our hands, right? You can sustain a power chord just by holding it and then just bashing on it. Okay, or you can start to build kind of like a partnership between your hands by when I'm striking the strings, I'm getting a burst, and then my left hand is releasing the pressure. So now I'm getting a, and you can palm mute it. And then you kind of like chug with your hands. There's a lot of different dynamics that you can do with power chords. It's not just like. So, you know, that's an interesting way to think of it. What's a good exercise for syncing the right and left hands that can be part of a daily routine? Okay, cool. We'll go over that in a second, but I want to talk a little bit more about power chords and what else you can do. Because the power chord is technically just a 2-note chord, okay? Not to be rude, but what is your name on here? So my name is Sean Daniel. Definitely got a ton of lessons on YouTube. Sean, S-E-A-N. Daniel, no S. Just Google it, YouTube it. You'll see this beautiful face come up all over the place. Thanks for stopping in, Larry, if you got to go. I totally appreciate you being active in the community. Definitely look forward to hearing from you soon. But like I was saying about power chords, right? It's just a 2-note chord. Technically, a chord needs to be 3 different notes to be a triad. Hey, my man, what's going on, buddy? Yeah. So when we're talking about power chords, this isn't just a power chord, right? We can have more than 1 note. Like we can have an octave, an A octave. So I've got 5, E, 7, A, 7, D. Now I'm playing 3 notes, but there's only 2 different notes, so it's still technically a power chord, okay? Again, power chord is just a 2-note chord. So we can actually make this a kind of like a major-ish power chord by doing this right here and getting the major 3rd, and then just making it a 2-note chord. We can make it minor by grabbing this one. These are all kind of technically different power chords, right? Another one, kind of like a power chord inversion, would be 5E and 5A. this would be like a D power chord, the root note being D, like right here. So here's like a D power chord, 5A and 7D. If we just took this note right here, which is an A, and put it below, underneath, then we've got kind of like a D power chord inversion, where the root note isn't the lowest note. So there's just different ways that you can kind of like start thinking more musically about power chords to kind of get that same aggression that a lot of like punk rock bands use, but to still make it a little bit more musical, which will, I think makes it more interesting, right? So back to kind of like syncing your hands in maybe like more of a rhythmic way, right? So let's take this C major chord. Okay, which is just like a regular C major chord, but your ring finger is going to be on the low E string, 3rd fret, and your pinky is going to be right where your ring finger was on the 3rd fret of the A string. So this is kind of like a fuller C major. You could also see this is another inversion too, where I'm getting all 6 strings. Now the reason I like this for like a rhythmic synchronizationing exercise is because it's a little bit of a fuller sound. And again, another thing that you can practice to a metronome easy enough, where you're always going down and up, but now we're going to start selectively muting certain beats. So 1 and 2 and, okay? So the downbeat on the 1 is going to be sustained. Also, the and of 1 is going to be sustained, and then the 2 and the and of 2 are going to be deadened, muted. Now the way I'm doing that is I'm just kind of taking this chord and I'm laying my fingers down. So they're just touching the strings, muting them, and not allowing the strings to resonate, right? So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and easy to do to a metronome. So you can see my hand is laying down in perfect synchronicity with my strumming hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and on that 1 and the 3, it's getting back up. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You go to like an F major chord. And then kind of add some dynamics to it. And then it's like a much more lively way of strumming because you're thinking about the synchronicity of your hands. I'm going to keep changing the root word of whatever adjective I'm trying to describe synchronization-ity with it. So not palm muting, but all with the fingers. Yeah, so this, yeah, right, this one for sure is all, there's no palm muting going on here. It does kind of sound like palm muting. Why is there no G note in an open C7 chord? Well, so what are we talking about? Like this guy right here, where you've got a C, an E, there's the flat 7, that B flat, and then a C. Now, that's a great question. Okay, so just like we were talking about before with a triad, or a C7 is a 4-note chord where you have a C, an E, a G, and a B flat. It's like, you're right, where's the G in this chord? This shouldn't be a C7. I'm missing a G to complete my C7 chord, but this is universally known to be a C7, right? So again, this isn't really about synchronizing things, but because there's no G in that, doesn't mean I can't still call it a C7 chord, because that G is being implied. Whenever you have a root note, its 5th is the most powerful kind of secondary supportive note in there. So a C and a G is just kind of like, you know, we're implying that the G is there, and then we have a C's major 3rd and another C, right? I have 2 C's and 2 E's, and then this flat 7. So I'm still technically calling this a C7, even though there's no G in it, just because I'm implying it. Same with like something like this guy right here. I've got a C, its major 3rd, an E, and then a B, 3A, 2D, 4G. Now that's a C major 7 voicing, even though I don't have a G in there too. That G is implied. Implying something is something that is really helpful on guitar, especially when it comes to chord voicings that have maybe like 5, sometimes 6 notes. Sometimes that can be absolutely impossible to play because we can only play a maximum of 6 notes at a time, and sometimes they're really hard to find like a 4th, 5th, or 6th note, depending on where you are in the neck. Whereas on a piano, you can play 10 different notes because you have 10 fingers, right? So yeah, a little bit back to somebody just asked a question about percussiveness. First thing I learned to play was drums, so I've always played percussive a lot and heavy-handed. Yeah, so honestly, a great way to synchronize your hands is to kind of think in the mindset of a drummer too, okay? And alternating back and forth is like a huge part of percussion in drums. Kind of like, just like a steady like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and do it with a metronome. And then drummers have these things called rudiments, right? So one of like the most well-known rudiments is called a paradiddle, okay? And kind of learning some of these things, even if you're not doing it on a kit, if you do it on like your knee or just on the back of your guitar or anything, is just a way to help you synchronize your hands. So let's all learn how to play a paradiddle, shall we? All it is like, let's start with, I'm gonna start with my right hand. I'm gonna go right, left, right, right. And again, do this with the metronome, just like the other alternating exercises we've done. Right, left, right, right, and then we're gonna do the inverse. Left, right, left, left. Some people might get the hang of this really quick. Other people, it takes a little bit of time to kind of like, again, get your brain on board with what you're doing. Right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. Paradiddle, paradiddle. And then if you want to dynamically accent like the pair part, the one part, paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. It's kind of the exact same thing that we're talking about. It's the synchronization between your hands that you're really working for, right? And you might be like, Sean, this is stupid. I'm not a drummer. I don't want to play drums. I'm way classy. I'm too classy to play a drum kit. I wear shirts, and I don't even have any hats I could wear backwards, even if I wanted to be a drummer. Well, you can use those same principles of paradiddles, drum rudiments, on a guitar, right? And that's where we're actually going to finally break the alternating pattern of how we've been doing things, right? So we've always been going down and up no matter how we've been talking about synchronizing today. Now if we did that paradiddle, paradiddle, but in guitar terms where we have a directional component, instead of left and right, we have down and up. Paradiddle, paradiddle, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. I can't even say it right, it's so hard to say. Again, say it and then you can play it, right? But, so let's do that same thing on that C chord, right? So if we play a paradiddle style C chord, we can accent the 1 on those. Down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, So again, it's something that is born from synchronizing your hands, but eventually you're just going to learn that rudiment on one hand. And then you can kind of do the same thing with, you know, your fingers. Just kind of a couple of examples of how you can kind of use drum rudiments to help you play, right? So now somebody was talking a little bit earlier about palm muting and how kind of like dynamic strumming. Now I'm gonna be thinking of paradiddles for like the rest of this time now. Like it's so hard to like get, like now everything I do is gonna be a paradiddle, right? But again, back to, I'm gonna try to break my head of these paradiddles and go back to the alternating 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and thing that we've been doing. And again, before we sustained the 1 and muted the 2 and the and of 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Someone was saying that it sounded kind of like palm muting by getting this mute, this deadened sound, and how that's different from like a palm mute. Again, palm muting is where you take like the side of your hand, kind of karate chop near the bridge, and kind of get a deadened sound where it's not the sustain isn't coming from my fretting hand. I'm just keeping this down. So if I were just to strum it, it would sustain as long as my guitar allowed it to, right? But if I kind of chop this bridge, it just kind of has a deadened sound. Now you can increase the deadening of it by how much you kind of work your way away from the bridge, right? So if we just kind of did like a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Now I'm not doing anything with my left hand, so there's not a lot of synchronization going on here, but it is worth noting how maybe on this kind of pattern, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, on the 3 I'm letting off the palm mute a little bit to get a different kind of a dynamic strum going on. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm kind of off on that third beat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. Okay, which I'm kind of getting a similar thing from the synchronizational way as another one. I keep coming up with new words to say synchronized something. The synchronizationally way is by allowing that mute to happen on the 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now I'm going to sustain everything except for the 3 now. That 3 is going to be kind of a dynamic hit that I'm coordinating between my left and my right hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you can kind of see on that 3 it's off, and then the end of 3 is back on. 3 and 4, or 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that all comes from having good coordination between your left and your right hand. So it's not just a lead thing, it's not just a rhythm thing, it's a musical thing. And again, you can practice across all types of instruments. We've already talked a little bit about drums and doing different rudiments. Like a piano is another great way, where almost kind of like piano is like, I think even maybe a better example of synchronizing your hands. Future video, riff deconstruction, spirit of radio, please. Oh, tomorrow's riff deconstruction is pretty good. It's Take 5 by Brubeck. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, so what was it? Oh, like piano synchronization, right? Because you have two hands, which are kind of, you know, the inverse of each other. And like if you play like a C, E, G with your left hand, you play a C, E, G with your right hand. Do the same thing, right? You can sync them up or have each of them do its own thing. Now the thing about guitar is generally you kind of have to be working together to create one common goal. Now, that's not always the case. You know, you can kind of like play things and kind of like maybe tap and like maybe kind of do your own melody with your right hand and stuff. But for the most part, your right hand is allowing, or your strumming hand is allowing your fretting hand to, you know, grab the notes, the chords, the melodies you're looking for. So again, synchronization, super important in a different way from maybe some other instruments kind of go, right? So I want to talk about maybe doing like a motif style thing to start syncing your hands up with the triplets that we were talking about. So kind of like maybe if you missed earlier in the feed, I was talking about being able to say things, and if you can say it, then you can play it. We're still doing the triplet, 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 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. But now we're going to use something bluesier, like the pentatonic scale, to kind of come up with an example of how we can start syncing our hands together, okay? So again, we're going to stay in the center of this fretboard. We're going to do the A minor pentatonic scale. 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. Okay? Now we're going to start going backwards. We're going to start with just those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just these 6 notes going backwards through the pentatonic scale. But we're going to do 3 at a time, like this. Triplet. Okay, so 8E, 5E, 8B. And again, I'm alternating the pick. Now I'm gonna do 3 of those, so that's 1 beat, that's a triplet. 1 triplet. Now the next beat, I'm gonna advance 1 note in the scale and then go 3 notes back again. So now instead of starting on 8E and going back 3 notes, I'm gonna start on 5E and go back 3 notes. So I've got 1 triplet, 2 triplet. All right, and I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna play 3 notes, advance one note through the scale backwards, and then eventually complete the whole scale. So 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet. Okay? It's kind of painful to do it that slow. Again, let me stress, do these with a metronome. Even though I'm not showing you here, I wish I could be doing it with a metronome, but like I said before, it's a little too much to keep starting and stopping every kind of phrase that we're doing. But I think this actually may be one of the better ones. I really think the thing can you do a little bit of Jack Johnson, You and Your Heart maybe? A little Jack Johnson for you? Maybe eventually. Not this video. This video we're talking about synchronization. But eventually we'll get to some Jack Johnson, I'm sure, on this channel or others, whatever. Right now, we're all about these triplets in this kind of like pentatonic motif, right? So, do it with metronome. 1 triplet, back 1, backwards. Old Jack has got it. Yeah, for sure. You know it. Do the same thing forward. And again, try to get as slow as you need to do this with getting every single note super clean, because the cleanliness of this, it's so hard to do this and talk at the same time. The cleanliness of these notes, what we're going for, to build that synchronizational aspect component into your fretting hand and your picking hand, okay? So, let's do a quick recap of what we're talking about. We started off with the chromatic exercise where you just go 1 fret at a time, 4 frets per string, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, backwards, 1 fret higher. Okay, we did that. That was a lot of fun. I had a great time doing that. Nothing is more fun than chromatics. We went to arpeggios, specifically this G major arpeggio, 3 octaves worth. And again, so G, A, B, D, G, A, B, D, G, A, B, D, G. Okay? We talked a little bit about rhythmically adding mutes by laying your fretting hand across the strings to prevent anything from vibrating. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We talked about drum rudiments, kind of going back and forth. Right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. And again, you can do the same thing with triplets, like we were talking about, like 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Somewhat off topic again, but after playing for about 2 years, how do you start counting? I've been playing by ear and feel, but I would hate to think of myself playing in a band with others. Yeah, so counting, again, it all comes down to being able to play with something that is going to aid you with counting, whether that be a metronome, just like we've been stressing. But also, I get you if you don't want to play with metronome because it can be boring. There's something kind of lifeless about it. That's why, even above and beyond metronomes, I prefer backing tracks, especially like a drum loop. So really play with a drum loop, maybe like a slower drum loop. There's a lot of apps and stuff that you can make your own. You can do tempo adjustable drum loops, or you start counting in 4. So even if it's something super slow, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and like the drum 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Like a kick on 1, snare on 3, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, kick, 2, snare, 4, kick, 2, snare, 4. Just start counting it out. And this doesn't even have to be just while you're practicing. If you're like, you know, whatever, if you're in a car, if you're doing public transportation, something, if you're listening to music, try to count the song in your head that you're listening to, because everything that you hear, 99% has been recorded to a click track or some kind of like device that is like helping keep time. So being able to diagnose how to count things, counting things you're listening to when you're not even playing is super helpful. No matter what you're strumming, there's a counting to everything. 1 and 2 and Just feels like starting over because I can't play when counting. Yeah, right? It does that. I totally hear you on that, man. It's like, it almost feels like you're taking a step back because you're not able to play to your full abilities while you're counting. That's why I think one of the best things for me was to start playing in more odd-timed songs. Like waltzes have, and playing dynamically, because if you play dynamically to a waltz, it almost does the counting for you. So there's an Elliott Smith song called Between the Bars that I love to kind of like teach and play, where it's just this A minor chord with your pinky on the 3rd fret on the high E string, A minor 7, and you're gonna play like this. So this is gonna be in 3. It's gonna be 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, and. The first bar of 3, you're gonna start with just like the lower part of the chord, maybe even just the root note. The second bar of 3, you're gonna start with the higher part of the chord. 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, and. So if you can't count it, I know that you can play it, where you're just going low strum, high, low, high. And the thing about a waltz is it kind of makes you, a waltz being just anything in 3/4 timing, go back and forth, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So even if you can't out loud count with that, you can hear low, high, low, high. And there's a kind of internal counting that goes with it, and eventually you'll be able to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, or even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm a big fan of using waltzes to help really solidify your counting, because there's something about a waltz, just because it's odd, it's an odd time signature that's different, that makes you pay more attention to that downbeat. So I personally think that it reinforces that downbeat a little bit more than maybe just your average 4/4 timing. Recommendations to trying to play a song by ear. I think theme songs from television shows or movies are really great ones to do that, because, or even like commercials, because like the job of those is like to be super catchy and to alert you, right? Like maybe like a new character is coming, they have like a theme, so that you're alerted to that. So the whole job of that melody is to kind of get you to pay attention for the most part, right? So generally they tend to be simpler phrases melodically. So I think they're a little bit easier to kind of grab from a scale, from a major scale, because you can almost play anything from just using the notes of the major scale. So I would say try to like learn theme songs by ear first. I found counting difficult too until I did it for a few days. Now I can't play without counting. It's a great tip. Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Definitely. Musical counting cannot be stressed enough. Like if you have solid counting, you are a solid musician. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you can shred, nothing. If you can stay in the pocket and just play simple chords, like you're on it. Like you're doing your thing, and what you play is going to be pleasing to like pretty much anybody because you're playing in time. Now, unless you're playing, nothing against like death metal, but if you're playing like, you know, grindcore in perfect time, maybe some people won't enjoy that. But at least you're playing it in time, and no one can ever take that away from you. So definitely thank you all for hanging out and listening to me talk about synchronizational abilities for the last 48 minutes. And yeah, definitely put some hours in on counting. You're gonna be happy that you did. So if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, hit us up in the comments, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks a lot.